Kayla, why do you look so lost? Are you okay? Todd's warm breath mixed with the frosty air. His concern seemed genuine, but I could feel the tears threatening to spill. Forcing a smile, I answered, "Just thinking. Let's go home and enjoy the stew I've been preparing." As we walked, the city around us bustled in Christmas cheer. The streets were lined with twinkling lights and families enjoying the season. I clung to Todd's arm, dreading the evening ahead. Our apartment, though small, was cozy and warm. Todd shrugged off his coat and tossed it over the couch, then headed straight for the kitchen. He lifted the lid on the stew pot, inhaling deeply. "Smells good," he remarked, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I nodded, placing freshly baked bread on the table. We sat down to eat, but the tension in the room was palpable. Todd's initial warmth had faded, replaced by a cold demeanor I recognized all too well. I focused on my bowl, hoping we could get through the meal without incident. "Did you see that new couple moving in next door?" Todd asked abruptly. Caught off guard, I nodded again. "They seemed nice," I said, trying to sound casual. "Seem nice?" Todd's voice hardened. "You talked to them without telling me first?" "I just said hello, Todd. It wasn't a big deal." I kept my voice calm, my hands nervously gripping my spoon. "It is a big deal. I told you to always tell me when you talk to people." He glared at me, and I felt a familiar chill creep in. His control over me had grown stronger over the years. I used to believe his intentions were protective, born out of love. But now, sitting across from him, I saw the truth, an illusion of perfection masking a man who thrived on power and control. After dinner, Todd retreated to the living room, leaving me to clean up. I could hear the TV blaring in the background, but I stayed in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes with a focus that helped numb my thoughts. The water was scalding, but I welcomed the pain. It was a distraction. "Kayla!" Todd's voice cut through my trance. I quickly dried my hands and walked into the living room. He was on the couch, remote in hand, eyes glued to the screen. "Yes?" I asked softly. "Bring me a beer." I headed to the fridge, grabbed a can, and handed it to him. He didn't look at me. His focus was solely on the game. I stood there for a moment, waiting for some acknowledgement, some sign that he saw me. But nothing came. I was invisible to him, a mere shadow in the background of his life. Finding my voice, I said, "I'm going to bed, Todd." He grunted in response, and I turned away, heading to our bedroom. As I lay in the dark, memories of happier times bubbled up. Nana's comforting words, her wisdom about finding happiness beyond the darkness. I clung to those memories tightly, using them as a shield against the creeping despair. With Nana's words echoing in my mind, I made a silent vow. Somehow, I would find my happiness. I wouldn't let this cold, controlling life define me. As I drifted off to sleep, the city's twinkling lights were now a distant memory, replaced by the suffocating walls of our apartment and the man who trapped me within them. Little did Todd know his grip was not as strong as he thought. And one day, he would learn that the hard way. "No hot sauce? Seriously, Kayla? You can't even handle a simple grocery list." Todd's voice boomed through our small apartment, his face flushed with anger. I flinched, trying to keep my composure. "I'm sorry, Todd, I must have forgotten. I'll get it tomorrow." "Forget it. You always forget. What's the point of you if you can't do anything right?" His words stung, each one a jab at my already bruised spirit. I nodded silently, refusing to let him see how his words cut me. Instead, I busied myself setting the table for breakfast. Todd stormed out of the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. As I poured the coffee, Nana's voice echoed in my head, her comforting presence always a source of strength. "You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I wished she was here now. I could almost see her sitting at the small round table, her kind eyes filled with wisdom. But those days were gone, and I was left to navigate this overwhelming loneliness. Todd's job kept him out of the apartment during the day, which was my only solace. I planned to visit Nana today, hoping her familiar scent of lavender and old books would offer some relief. In the afternoon, I grabbed my coat and headed to Nana's house, the cold air biting at my cheeks. Her home, a small, cozy haven, welcomed me with open arms. As I stepped inside, the warmth enveloped me, and for a brief moment, I felt safe. "Kayla, there's my beautiful girl," Nana greeted me with a gentle hug. "Come, sit down, have some tea." We sat at her modest kitchen table, the steam rising from our mugs. I watched Nana as she moved around, her frail frame a stark contrast to the powerhouse of strength she embodied. "How's it going, dear?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated. "It's been hard, Nana. Sometimes I feel so alone." Nana reached across the table, her hands gripping mine with surprising strength. "I've always told you, Kayla, you'll face struggles, but you have a fire in you. You'll find happiness. Remember that." I nodded, absorbing her words like a sponge, desperate for any bit of hope. As we talked, memories of my childhood flooded back. Sundays spent baking cookies with Nana, her laughter filling the air. She was my rock, the one constant in a world spinning out of control. After a long afternoon of sharing stories and sipping tea, I felt lighter somehow. Nana's unwavering belief in me sparked a glimmer of hope. I hugged her tightly before leaving, her soft voice a whisper in my ear. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." Back at the apartment, the coldness hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Todd was sprawled on the couch, a beer in his hand, eyes glued to the TV screen. "Where have you been?" he demanded without looking up. "Visited Nana," I replied, hanging my coat. "Well, it's about time you got home. Make sure you don't forget the hot sauce tomorrow." I swallowed my frustration, nodding silently. As I prepared dinner, Nana's words played over in my mind, a silent chant to keep me going. Better days are coming, I told myself over and over, clinging to that flicker of hope. Todd's grip might be suffocating, but Nana's wisdom gave me strength. Somehow, I would find the courage to break free. One day, Todd would realize that his control was slipping, and my resilience would be his downfall. I awoke the next morning, feeling the weight of yesterday's visit to Nana still lingering. Her words cycled through my mind, giving me a faint sense of strength. But Todd's looming presence was a constant reminder of my reality. By midday, after completing my chores, I decided to head back to Nana's. Her home was my sanctuary, the only place where I felt any semblance of peace. I slipped out quietly, not wanting to wake Todd, who was sprawled on the couch, snoring lightly from last night's binge. Arriving at Nana's, I instantly felt calmer. She greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a tight embrace. "You look tired, dear. Come and sit down," she said, leading me to the kitchen. We settled at the table, and she poured us both a cup of tea. The familiarity of her actions was comforting. "Nana, I've been thinking a lot about what you said," I admitted, tracing my finger along the edge of the cup, "about facing struggles and finding happiness." "Good," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a knowing look. "Remember, Kayla, you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I nodded, feeling the resolve build up inside me. "Thank you, Nana. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll find your way, Kayla, although the path might be hard." Feeling lighter, I left Nana's house and returned to our apartment. The weight of Todd's presence hit me immediately upon entering. He was awake now, sitting at the table with a scowl etched on his face. "What took you so long?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing. "I was visiting Nana again," I explained, setting my bag down. "You're always running off there. Maybe you should move in with her," he sneered. Ignoring his comment, I went to the kitchen to start dinner. The silence was thick, filled with unspoken tensions. I could feel Todd's eyes boring into my back as I prepared the meal. Later that evening, as we were eating, Todd's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his demeanor shifted, a sly smirk appearing on his lips. Curiosity piqued, I watched as he typed something back, quickly and secretively. "You seem happy," I noted, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. "I just got some good news from work," he replied nonchalantly, not looking up. After dinner, I cleaned up, my mind whirling with suspicions. Todd's secretive behavior had been growing, and my gut told me there was more to it than just work. As I lay in bed that night, Nana's words reverberated in my mind, offering a small but significant comfort. The path was undeniably hard, but I had to believe that happiness waited for me, somewhere beyond the turmoil. The next day, while Todd was at work, I decided to take a small step towards reclaiming my freedom. I visited a nearby real estate office, inquiring about small, affordable apartments. I didn't make any commitments, but gathering information was the first step towards my eventual escape. Returning home later that day, I felt a mixture of fear and empowerment. Todd was already back and met me with his usual chilly disposition. "Where have you been?" he snapped, his tone accusatory. "Just running errands," I replied casually, refusing to meet his gaze. His eyes scanned my face, searching for any hint of defiance. Finding none, he retreated to his usual spot on the couch. I busied myself with mundane tasks, my mind buzzing with the possibilities that stretched ahead. Nana's words continued to echo in my mind, a beacon guiding me through the darkness. I wasn't sure how or when, but I knew that one day I would break free. And Todd would see just how strong I could be. The day started out normal. I was grocery shopping, crossing items off the list, trying to keep my mind focused. But a strange weariness had settled over me. I ignored it, convincing myself it was just the stress of everything weighing me down. As I reached for a box of cereal, a dizzy spell hit me hard. My vision blurred, the sounds around me became distant. Before I could react, everything went dark. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. The sterile smell filled my nostrils. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed to my side. "You're at St. Mary's Hospital," she explained softly. "You fainted in the grocery store. We ran some tests." Confusion and fear churned within me. What tests? What did they find? The doctor walked in, carrying a clipboard. His expression was serious. "Mrs. Smith, I'm Dr. Martin. We need to discuss your results." My heart pounded. "What's wrong with me?" Dr. Martin took a deep breath. "Your blood work revealed an infection. It's an STD, Mrs. Smith, chlamydia." I stared at him, my world collapsing. "That's impossible. I've only been with my husband." Dr. Martin looked at me with a mix of pity and concern. "This type of infection typically spreads through sexual contact. It's important you inform your partner and seek treatment." Numbness washed over me as Dr. Martin continued talking, but his words became a distant echo. Todd. He had to be the source. I couldn't believe he betrayed me like this. Back at the apartment, Todd was sitting on the couch, half watching TV. I stormed in, my anger boiling over. "Todd, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. He barely glanced at me. "What now, Kayla?" I took a deep breath, my hands trembling. "I've never been with anyone else, Todd. Who did you give this to me from?" Todd's head snapped up, his face turning pale. "What are you talking about?" "The doctor found an STD, Todd," I said, my voice cracking. "Chlamydia. Who else have you been sleeping with?" He stood up, his eyes blazing. "Are you accusing me of something?" "Who else would it be?" I shouted back. "I've only ever been with you. You did this to me." For a moment, Todd looked like he was going to deny it, but then his expression shifted to something colder. "You know what, Kayla? Maybe if you weren't so useless at home, I wouldn't have needed someone else." The room spun around me. His words cut deeper than any knife. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. You betrayed me," I whispered. Todd scoffed. "Get over it. It's not the end of the world." But to me it felt like it was. Any hope I had clung to was shattered. The dream of a family, children, and a life full of love was obliterated in an instant. "Get out of my sight," he spat, storming out of the room. I was left alone in the cold, empty apartment, my body racked with sobs. Nana's voice echoed softly in my mind, offering a small, fragile comfort amidst the tumult. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." As broken as I felt, a new resolve settled in my heart. Todd had taken much from me, but he wouldn't take my hope. One way or another I would break free from his grasp, and he would pay for every tear he forced me to shed. "I'll obey you, Todd, but remember, you asked for this," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the kettle whistling on the stove. Todd paid no attention to my words, lost in his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's blue light. He smirked and shrugged, barely looking up. "Good girl." Inside, I seethed with a mixture of rage and determination. His casual dismissal only fueled my drive. That night, as he slept peacefully, I quietly slipped out of bed and headed to the closet. I pulled down an old suitcase and began packing the essentials. I made sure to be quiet, each rustle of fabric sounding deafening in the silence of the night. The next few days, I tread carefully, making sure not to alert Todd to my plans. I stashed money away, small amounts here and there, enough to get me started once I left. I contacted a few friends I could trust, securing a place to crash temporarily. Every interaction with Todd became an act. My compliance was strategic. My silence was a weapon. It was all part of a plan he never saw coming. "Did you remember the groceries?" Todd asked one evening, not looking up from his dinner. "Yes, I picked everything up," I replied, handing him the receipt without a second thought. "Good," he muttered, his attention completely on the TV. His complacency disgusted me, but it also worked in my favor. That weekend, Todd had a work event he couldn't get out of. He left the apartment early, suited up and ready to impress. I watched from the window as his car pulled away. As soon as he was out of sight, I sprang into action. I pulled out the hidden suitcase from under the bed and added the final items. I grabbed the envelope of cash I had stashed behind a loose brick in the wall. Every move was made with precision, every step a part of my silent resolve. I had already secured a temporary place with my friend Jenny, who had been more than supportive when I confided in her. "You can stay as long as you need," she had assured me over the phone, her voice calm and steady. With everything packed, I took a final look around the apartment. This place had held so much promise once. Now it was just a cage, suffocating and cold. My eyes landed on a photo of Todd and me from happier times. I picked it up, feeling the weight of lost dreams in my hands. Then, with a deep breath, I set it down gently on the coffee table and walked out the door. As I locked the door behind me, I felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Fear of the unknown and relief from the oppressive life I was leaving behind. I hurried to meet the cab waiting for me at the entrance of our building. As we sped away, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The building shrank from view, and with it, the remnants of my life with Todd. Arriving at Jenny's place, she greeted me with a warm hug. "You're safe here," she reassured me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe her. As I settled into the guest room, Nana's words echoed in my mind. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." As I lay down that night, I felt a spark of hope bloom amidst my exhaustion. Todd had underestimated me greatly. He might have broken my heart, but my spirit was far from defeated. The real journey was just beginning, and this time I would be the one in control. "Why didn't you tell me about the STD, Todd? Who else are you sleeping with?" My voice cut through the quiet room like a knife as Todd entered our old childhood home, now vacant, except for the memories that clung to the walls. Todd's face twisted in shocked anger. "How did you find out about this place? And what the hell are you talking about?" "I know everything," I replied, my tone steady, years of pent-up rage and betrayal boiling over. "I've been recording our conversations, Todd. Every demeaning comment, every time you raised your voice. I have it all." For a moment, Todd's confidence wavered, but his arrogance quickly returned. "You think anyone will believe you? You have no proof. You're just a desperate, scorned woman." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, calmly pressing play on the audio files I had saved. Todd's venomous words filled the space, each one a piece of the puzzle that painted an unmistakable picture of his true nature. "They'll believe me," I said, my voice stronger now. "I've kept everything documented, and it's not just me, Todd. Others know too." His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw genuine fear. "What do you want, Kayla? Money? Apologies? None of this will change anything." "I'm not doing this for money or apologies," I stated. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions. You've hurt me, deceived me, and now it's time for you to pay." Todd clenched his fist, stepping closer. "You think you're tough now, Kayla? You think you can take me down? You're pathetic." Ignoring his attempt to intimidate me, I continued, "You're going to come clean. You're going to face everyone and tell them the truth about who you are." A cruel laugh escaped Todd's lips. "And if I don't, then I'll release these recordings. I've made sure they're in safe hands. You can't stop them from getting out," I replied, holding his gaze with unwavering determination. Todd's confidence shattered. He paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair. "You're bluffing." "Try me," I challenged. "We both know what's at stake." Todd's face contorted with rage, but he knew he was trapped. He couldn't risk losing everything he'd built on lies. "Fine," he spat out. "I'll meet with your people. But this isn't over, Kayla." I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Oh, it's just beginning, and remember, every step you take, I'll be there watching." He stormed out of the house, leaving me standing alone in the echo of his departure. My heart pounded, but I felt an overwhelming sense of justification. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. As I walked out, the memories of our childhood home seemed to fade, replaced by the strength of my new resolve. Todd would soon learn that karma had a long reach, and his time of reckoning was at hand. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, the odds were in my favor. As I headed back to Jenny's, the words Nana used to say echoed in my mind. "You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing the power of my own resilience. Todd's control over me was at its end, and the real battle was about to begin. "Your lies are finally catching up to you, Todd." "They know everything," I said with cold satisfaction, watching him squirm in the center of his office meeting room. Todd's mask of confidence cracked entirely in that moment. His eyes darted around the room, filled with his colleagues and his boss, Mr. Jenkins. They all wore expressions of shock and disbelief as the recordings of his verbal abuse played from the speakers. "What is this?" Mr. Jenkins demanded, his face turning red with anger. "This is not the man we thought we knew." Todd stumbled over his words, attempting to regain control. "This is private. This doesn't concern my work. Kayla, you have no right." I cut him off sharply. "You acted one way at home, Todd, but you can't hide anymore. Everyone sees the real you now." Sarah, one of Todd's close colleagues, stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "How could you, Todd? We trusted you. We thought you were one of us, but you've been living a lie." Todd's eyes narrowed, his attempts to gather sympathy faltering. "Sarah, you don't understand. This is all her doing. She's trying to ruin me." Mr. Jenkins raised a hand to silence Todd. "I think we've heard enough from you, Todd. Your behavior is absolutely unacceptable." "Kayla, thank you for bringing this to our attention." I nodded, my eyes never leaving Todd. "I'm not doing this out of spite. This is for everyone Todd has hurt, who might hurt in the future. This is about the truth." Todd's bravado faltered entirely. He turned to Mr. Jenkins, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." Mr. Jenkins shook his head. "It looks exactly like what it is, Todd. You're suspended, effective immediately. We will review this thoroughly, but expect a termination, and legal charges might follow." The colleagues murmured in agreement, their trust in Todd completely shattered. Todd looked around the room, realizing that he had lost his allies, his grip on power slipping entirely. I took a step forward, my voice calm but firm. "It didn't have to come to this, Todd. But you chose to deceive and manipulate. Actions have consequences." His eyes met mine, filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "This isn't over, Kayla." A small, cold smile tugged at my lips. "Oh, it is, and it's only fitting." I walked out of the meeting room, feeling their eyes on me, but more importantly, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Todd's reign of terror was crumbling, and justice was on the horizon. As I exited the building, the fresh air hit my face, and I took a deep, liberating breath. My phone buzzed, a message from Jenny. "How did it go?" I replied simply, "It's done." Nana's words came back to me once again, a comforting reminder of the path I had taken to get here. I knew there were still battles to fight, but the biggest one had just been won. Todd would face the fallout of his actions, and I would no longer be a victim. I walked away from that chapter of my life, feeling stronger and more resolved than ever. As I headed home, my new life, free from Todd's shadow, began to take shape. Better days were indeed coming, and I was ready to embrace every single one of them. I stood by the window, watching the snow gently blanket the streets outside. Christmas lights adorned the houses, casting a soft, inviting glow. The sounds of laughter and festive cheer floated through the air, filling me with warmth. Ethan stepped into the room, holding our daughter Emma in his arms. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she pointed to the lights outside. "Look, Mommy, it's so pretty," I smiled, reaching out to stroke her hair. "Yes, Emma, it really is." Ethan placed Emma down, and she ran off to marvel at the Christmas tree. He came over and slipped an arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked gently, his voice full of concern and love. "Better than okay," I replied, leaning into him. I never believed Nana when she said happiness would find me after the struggle, but here we are. Ethan kissed my forehead, a reassuring gesture that grounded me. "You've been through a lot, Kayla. I'm proud of you." The past year had been transformative. Todd's reputation had taken a massive hit, and he faced legal consequences for his actions. Meanwhile, I had built a new life with Ethan, whose kindness and love had healed so many of my wounds. Emma's laughter filled the room as she decorated the tree with sparkly ornaments. The sight of her pure joy brought a sense of completeness that I had longed for. I joined her, adding ornaments and tinsel, focusing on the present and the future filled with hope. Ethan picked up a small box from under the tree and handed it to me. "Open it," he urged, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. Curious, I unwrapped the box to find a delicate necklace with a locket. Inside was a picture of Emma and a tiny note in Ethan's handwriting, forever and always. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of happiness. Thank you, Ethan. It's perfect. Emma ran over and gazed at the locket with wide eyes. So pretty, Mommy, I smiled down at her. Just like you, darling. Later that evening, as we sat down for dinner, the joy and love in the room were palpable. It was a striking contrast to the tense, suffocating atmosphere I had once known. Ethan held my hand under the table, a small but meaningful gesture that reminded me of how far I'd come. After dinner, we gathered around the fireplace. Ethan read Emma a Christmas story while I watched, feeling immense gratitude. The flames flickered, casting a warm glow, reminiscent of the light Nana always said would find me. Reflecting on the past, I realized that every struggle, every tear, and every moment of despair had led me to this. Nana's words had come to life in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. Happiness didn't just find me. I built it with the strength and resilience I never knew I had. As Ethan finished the story, Emma snuggled into my lap, her tiny hands gripping mine. I love you, Mommy, she murmured sleepily. I love you too, Emma. So much, I whispered back, my heart full. Ethan's eyes met mine over Emma's head, filled with love and pride. In his gaze, I saw the future, a future built on love, trust, and the promise of better days. Nana's prediction had come true. Beyond the darkness, I had found not just happiness, but a peace I had thought was lost forever. And with Ethan and Emma by my side, I knew we could overcome anything life threw our way. The new dawn was here, bringing with it all the joy, love, and laughter I had once feared impossible. The journey had been long and painful, but in the end, it was completely worth it. With Ethan and Emma, I was ready to embrace every beautiful moment life had to offer.